Welcome to the Master Passive Income Show. My name is Dustin Heiner, and I'm here to help you learn how to quit that JOB, that just overbroke job, by investing in real estate so you never, ever have to work a job again. Today, we're going to be talking about how you can buy low-cost AirBNB or short-term properties and make a lot of money and profit. See, we always think maybe buying Hawaii or in the mountains or the Alps or something like that, spend a lot of money for Airbnb. Well, you don't have to do that. You can buy inexpensive homes and still make 5 times the amount of profits you would from a long-term property. All right, let's start the show.
Welcome to the Master Passive Income Podcast, where we talk about investing in real estate with a special focus on making enough money so you can quit your job and live the dream life. And now, here's your host, Dustin Heiner.
Hey, what's going on? I am so glad to have you here on the show with me now. I love having my podcast, being able to talk to you about so many great things about real estate investing, and even talking about things that I'm doing, especially me talking about the things that I do in my own personal real estate investing business. See, I started investing back in 2006 before the crash, and I saw the crash happen, and I didn't really know exactly what I was doing, but I knew I was investing for passive income because I wanted to basically become successfully unemployed. And through 2007, 2008, prices were going up, and then the crash in 2008 and 2009. And I saw so many people go bankrupt. Everything stopped. It was rough for everybody. But then I realized, my goodness, my idea to just make passive income, not even worrying about appreciation, and making money every single month, $250 a month in passive income. That's $3,000 a year from one property. 10 properties is $2,500 a month, $30,000 a year. 20 properties making you $250 a month. That's $5,000 a month in passive income total, and $60,000 a year in passive income. That's without working. And I realized that if I just had enough properties, I can quit my job. But what I didn't realize was that all the other people that were going broke and going bankrupt in the crash of 2009, well, I didn't experience any of that. In fact, my rents went up. I made more money because I'm investing for passive income. Now, a lot of people invest for appreciation, which appreciation is great, but I'm going to be giving these properties to my kids. I'm creating generational wealth. And recently, I just did a webinar where I did a forecast, or not necessarily a prediction. I'm not a prophet or anything, but did a forecast of what I think is going to happen in the real estate market. I'm not going to give it away, but in the description, and in fact, I talked about this last week, but in the description, I actually put the link for you can go watch the replay. I put it on YouTube. Go and literally watch the entire thing. And in the very end, I give you a huge discount promo deal to get in my Real Estate Wealth Builders membership. I give you a huge deal so that you can get started. But I definitely want to show you what I'm seeing in the real estate market and what I'm looking forward to in 2023. In fact, I am so excited. Now, a lot of people aren't about the economy and how things are getting bad, but I'm so excited because us as real estate investors, this is going to be the best time ever to buy real estate. And I wish I had enough money, or I wish I was ready like I am now back in 2008, 9, and 10 when the market was amazing. I would be so much farther along than I am now. And so with you learning how to invest right now, this is going to be the absolute best time for you to be investing. So you need to be ready now. You need to be surfing before the wave comes. Basically, when you surf, you paddle before the wave gets to you, because you want to be able to have enough momentum to carry you into that wave, catch the wave, and ride it on in. Well, if you start paddling after the wave passes you, you won't be able to catch that wave. Same thing with real estate investing. We need to be prepared and ready. So that's why I'm glad you're here every single week listening to the podcast. And now I am bringing on a friend of mine he actually came to the Real Estate Wealth Builders Conference this last year. And in 2023, we're going to have it again, the Real Estate Wealth Builders Conference again, where he is going to come and share again about how he and his students do short-term rental properties. Now, not the type that you would think of, like, let's buy in Hawaii and go visit once a year for a week and then rent it out the rest of the time, where we spend $1 million, $2 million on the property. No, we are looking at properties that are less expensive and we can still make Airbnb. He gives a lot of tips on how to make sure that you're actively making more money from your properties, how to buy lower priced homes, how to actually even make sure that you're able to have your secure short-term properties in cities that don't allow you to even have short-term properties. He has got the answers. I am super pumped to bring on a friend of mine, Kirby Atwell from Living Off Rentals, on the show. All right, here we go. Kirby, thank you so much for being on the show, man.
Dustin, it's an honor to be back. I love doing anything that you're a part of, so I appreciate you having me here, man.
It's terrific. And I love how a lot of my students said, man, I really wanted short-term rentals. And I was like, what? Kirby's definitely your guy. Like, I could definitely help you, but Kirby has this down. So work with Kirby. But now, when we're thinking about the Real Estate Wealth Builders Conference, so you came and you saw the value of really just helping other people. And in fact, that's the reason why I brought you. I said, hey, and for everybody, whoever wants to be a speaker at RubeCon, it's invite only. And so right now we have literally 35 speakers, expert investors that have their own audiences, they have their own teaching and all that sort of stuff. But we're all coming together to help everybody out. And so Kirby, talk to us a little bit about your background, and then we'll jump in because I really want our audience to learn how to do this short-term rentals in the non-traditional sense, but still making a lot of money. So talk to us about you, and then we'll dive right into short-term rentals.
Sure. Yeah. So, happy to give a bit of an overview. I know I was on a previous episode, so people can go back and listen to the longer bio, I guess, there. But really, I mean, my real estate investing strategy that I currently do with this kind of non-traditional vacation rental model stemmed out of, in 2016, I was pretty much broke. And at the time, it's kind of funny because I thought I was doing all the right things. And so it was, it was, maybe people can relate to this. They feel like they've been doing a lot of the right things that they're supposed to be doing, but they found themselves from a financial standpoint really not making any progress. And that's where I was at. I had gone to a really good school. I went to West Point Military Academy, graduated there, served 6 years as an Army officer. Then in 2011, got out, got my MBA. While I was getting my MBA, I started my first real estate company, and it was a flipping company. And I thought, well, this is the way people make a bunch of money in real estate, is flipping houses. And so I partnered with two partners, and we grew that company in the Chicago area to be, one of the higher volume flippers in the Chicago area. And we flipped about 70 properties from 2011 to 2016. And then in 2016, I look up and I'm like, I'm in the exact same financial position that I was in before I started. And we had literally made millions of dollars in revenue over that 5 years when you look at all the properties we sold. But then you start to account for the cost of those properties, the cost of the rehabs, the cost of the overages, the cost of all the vanity metric things that we thought we needed, like getting an office and staff and, the marketing campaigns and all the things that you just keep pouring back in your company that no one talks about. They just look at the gross profit, quote unquote, and then you pay taxes on all that at the highest tax rate. And there's never anything left over. It's just enough to scrape by. And so that was the existence. And on top of that, we started doing a lot more volume, higher end properties. So we needed a whole bunch more capital. And so the stress level was through the roof, and we weren't making any money. So it was like on this hamster wheel that just sucked. And so that's when in 2016, I discovered what I know you've discovered as well, this power of passive income and this power of cash flow. And that's when I totally transitioned into rental properties. And initially it was longer term rentals for a little bit, but then I discovered short term rentals and this non-traditional short term rental model that I do now. And we just fell in love with it. And that's what's given us financial freedom, given us the lifestyle by design. And it's changed my family's future.
With the idea of going from actively having a job, like that's what you do when you're flipping or wholesaling, you have a job. It's not bad. I'm not saying don't do it, but if you need money, you need capital to be able to start your investing career, then definitely. I mean, it's a way to start making money, but you're working day in and day out. Now, when you get into buy and hold, it changes your life because you have money coming in without you doing anything. Now, you found the non-traditional type of AirBNB or short-term rental properties in 2016. And it's terrific having these short term because usually you get a lot more in revenue, like total gross rents, because you're renting it out per day as opposed to per month or per year. And with that does come some expenses, higher expenses, but you get higher revenues. Now, what is this non-traditional way of doing short-term rentals?
Yeah. So what I think that a common misconception or trap or thought process, I guess, that people kind of can fall into when it comes to short-term rentals or Airbnbs or vacation rentals, whatever you want to call it, shorter rentals, is that they think of the traditional vacation spots as the only place that it works. So, ski in, ski out mountains, beachfront properties, the places that you're going to, Disney World, the places that you go to vacation. And they overlook the fact that this literally works. This model of short-term rentals works in thousands of locations. And it can work, in my opinion, much, much better, much safer, much higher ROI in areas that you wouldn't think, anyone would ever travel to, especially if you live on the West Coast and you're like, why would anyone travel to Indiana, which is where we're at? And we have 20 vacation rental listings here that work phenomenally well. So what I started to look around when I started researching this, we moved from Chicago over to Indiana. And initially we said, well, let's just try it in our basement. Let's try, we keep hearing about Airbnb. This was back 2017. And we said, let's just try it, turn our basement that's unfinished, it's a walkout basement, into a 1-bedroom apartment and see what happens. And so that's what we did. And over that first summer, we made $22,000 renting out this tiny 1-bedroom basement. And I thought to myself, I have entire rental houses that don't make $22,000 the whole year. And we just made that in like a 3-month span. So I said, if we could scale this, there's something to this. And we're not in like a crazy, high-end vacation area. That house was right on Lake Michigan, but I started looking around and realizing that there's houses not on the water, not in crazy vacation areas, that are doing really well. And you can buy them for the same cost that I was buying long-term rentals for. And then in a worst case scenario, I can always convert those back to long-term rentals and they still cash flow. So I'm covered on all fronts. But in the meantime, while I'm using them as short-term rentals, they're making 3 or 4 times the cash flow.
3 or 4 times the cash flow sounds terrific. Now, there are more expenses. Now, with the more expenses is because you have more turnover. Like, I love that my tenants literally stay in there for 5, 6, 7 or more years, and I don't even have to talk to them. They don't move. They don't transfer out. Like, everything is awesome. I just love it. But at the same time, my profits are lower, but they're more fixed in a sense. With the short-term rentals, there's more expenses. Talk to us about these expenses that we have to watch out for as we're going to convert these into short-term rentals. And we'll get to this because I really want to know, what about the rougher areas, or like if it's not a destination city, should we still do that? But let's start with expenses. What type of expenses should we worry about, and how do we manage these properties, which, it's part of the expenses is managing.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So there's higher income, obviously, because you're renting it for a shorter period of time. So it's a nightly income. But and then there's higher expenses because you're paying for cleaning, you're paying for now the utilities, you're paying for the lawn and snow removal, you're paying for consumables like, toilet paper and paper towels and cleaning products, And
I want to pause for a quick second and share that, honestly, I really want you to invest in real estate. My new goal in my life, my first goal was to quit my job in 10 years, and I did that, accomplished that at 37. Now my new goal is to help 1 million people invest in real estate. So 2 things I would ask from you. Number 1, if you get anything out of this episode, please share it with somebody else. Just say, hey, check out Dustin, Master Passive Income. He really wants to help 1 million people to invest in real estate. That's number 1. Number 2, I want to get you to invest in real estate. Get my real estate investing course absolutely for free. Text the word rental, RENTAL, to 33777. Rental to 33777. I'll literally give you my course, show you how to find an area of the country to invest, how to build the business first. I always talk about that, and how to find the right properties, how to make sure you're getting experts to do the work for you, and scale the business to where you're making $250 or more in passive income. Scale it to quit your job. I'll literally get to you, or go to masterpassiveincome.com/free course. Obviously, it'll be in the description, but I really, really want you to invest in real estate, because the more that actual, normal, everyday people own real estate that are good landlords, the better everybody's life gets.
So yeah, there's definitely more expenses, more income as well, and so you've got to balance those out. And so what I tell people that sort of the ideal setup for these non-traditional vacation rentals is to start in more affordable markets, generally like the Midwest and Southeast. And I always look within an hour drive of larger cities. Sometimes it can be, even 15 minutes to the larger city. But what you'll find is that if you look in the city, a average purchase price might be $400,000 for a city, say, I don't know, Louisville, Kentucky, or Nashville or Indianapolis, or, one of these Midwestern cities. And then 20 minutes right outside the city, there's a town where the average purchase price is closer to $100,000. So it's a fourth of the cost. And the nightly rate downtown Indianapolis, just as an example, I don't know if this is what it is, but this is what you'll commonly see is maybe it's like, $200 a night downtown, and then outside it's $150 a night. So, it drops 25% in terms of nightly rate, but you get the property for 4 times less. So ROI wise, you're getting this phenomenal return on your investment. And again, going back to the benefits of, if you have to convert it to a long-term rental, it's easier to rent out $100,000 house than it is a $400,000 house. So that's where you start to see the cash flow shift a whole lot, because your expenses now are extremely low. You still have extra expenses than you would on a long-term rental, but cash flow wise, you've got that $150 a night, maybe a 70% occupancy rate, and so your net income after all is said and done tends to be really, really high.
I love that. Now, with managing it, do you manage these yourself? Or because I love, and that's what we do at Master Passive Income, we try to make it as automated as possible. We don't want to have to do anything. In fact, for all my properties, I maybe work 30 minutes a month. Like that book, that 4-hour work week, that's for suckers. I don't want to work 4 hours a week. Yeah. I don't even want to work 4 hours a month. I want to work 30 minutes. And so how do we make it automated, especially in these outside cities, because obviously inside a city like Louisville, like you're going to have a lot of people, a lot of property managers that would want to manage the properties. Outside of that, maybe not so much. But how do we make sure that we can manage it? And can we make it automatic so that it's managed, and so that as best we can, we don't have to actually do anything in the business?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think the intuitive thing to believe is that it's much more hands-on, and it is, I guess, in terms of the day-to-day what needs to be done. But what I found is that the tasks that need to be done can be automated much easier than long-term rentals, or you can have control over it more because it lends itself to the online world so much more, because it's built around like the Airbnb type of platform. So so basically what I tell people is I think it's crazy to pay a property manager, especially if you're just doing one property initially. Maybe once you get to larger scale, if it's too time consuming, then I think outsourcing that makes sense. But for a vacation rental manager, most of the time it's 20 to 30%. So 25% is typically the average that you're going to see. And so to pay 25% of your gross revenue is a lot of income.
It sure is.
And so, I recommend, what I teach people is to line up a great handyman and a great cleaner, and to have really good systems up front to where everything that can come up boots on the ground is explained to them, and they're responsible for those items, which I didn't do in the beginning. So I thought I needed to buy it close by. I needed to be involved. And so when the Wi-Fi would go out for a guest, I'd be driving over there. When a guest couldn't get in the lock, I'd drive over there. And I realized after about a year of that I was my own worst enemy, and that this could easily be outsourced. This could be systematized to where I could have a local handyman who's on call, do these items, and it doesn't really cost a whole lot, but it just comes down to having the right systems in place. So I self-manage, quote unquote, even though I haven't visited some of my properties in 6-8 months, even though they're 20 minutes down the road, because I've got just great people in place that are there to do that. And then once we got to 5 properties, that's when we brought on a guest relations person who actually lives in Florida, and she's worked for us for the last 2 years and has never been to Michigan City, Indiana, where we invest. But she probably knows the town better than most residents because she takes all the bookings, answers all the questions, lines up the handyman, lines up the cleaner. And so day to day, it's pretty hands off. But yet we're paying far less than 25% of our revenue for it.
And I think that any business that you would ever get into, if you figure out how to do it yourself, there's X, Y, and Z, there's steps. We call them SOPs, or standard operating procedures. If this happens, then make sure this happens. You're going to figure that out yourself. It'd be great if you just write it down, and then you can hire somebody like a virtual assistant or somebody, your cousin, or you can hire other people to literally do this work for you in any business. I literally have 4 or 5 businesses now. And with those, I hire other people to do the work. Now they're blessed with a good pay and taking care of them and their family. But at the same time, they're helping me alleviate the burden of my brain on these tasks. But if it's a task that you can do, you can easily offload that to somebody else. You just need to make sure it's documented and you find the right people. So you have a handyman and cleaning people. Now, the handyman, I guess, like they would handle the Wi-Fi. Do you have to train them up on every specific property? Or is it like, it seems like a handyman should be able to do most things. Is there, give us any tips that you have to find a really good handyman that'll be able to take care of the majority of things in the property?
Yeah, that's a good question. For both the handyman and cleaner, you can kind of go 2 different routes. You can hire an independent contractor directly who it's one person that you're hiring and they're the ones doing the work, or you can hire a service. So like if you hire a cleaning service, you're going to talk to somebody in the office, and then there's probably going to be a different cleaner cleaning that property each time. And most of the time, those are pretty low wage earners that are actually doing the cleaning. They're paid on getting through the property as quickly as possible, how many cleanings they can knock out. So their interest isn't necessarily as aligned. So the one that's worked best for us is the independent contractor in both regards. So for a handyman, what we found is our typical handyman is either somebody who's really young, kind of getting started. I hired a guy who's in the Army National Guard, just worked construction all through high school, and a young guy wanting to do something while he's not deployed or working in the Guard. And then also we hired a retired union construction guy who knows construction inside and out, has now time on his hands, doesn't want to fully retire, but yet doesn't want to work full time either. And so lives locally there, and he's been incredible, because he just has a lot of free time on his hands. And that's what you need, is somebody who's available, because you can't plan out all these things. And so he has kind of a small handyman business, but I think we're probably his main client at this point. And so that's what you want to have. We don't have to train him on every task that comes up, and we don't use him all the time, but you need to have somebody who's available. And then as we've grown more properties, we've kind of graduated one of our cleaners into the head cleaner. And so now she's responsible for all the inventory for all the properties. So we have an inventory checklist in each closet at each property. As it gets below a certain point, she restocks those inventory closets. And then she also does spot checks on all the other cleaners too. So it's taken that responsibility off of our shoulders as well. So she can, incorporate that. And then we just pay her per, resupply. She typically does, a few a month of all the properties. And it's well worth our time not to have to go to Costco and resupply all the properties ourselves like we used to do as well.
I love that you're offloading things, especially and what I love to do is I make sure when I'm building my business or buying the next property, all those expenses that come up, like a property management expense or soap and shampoo and like all that stuff that you kind of want to make it kind of like a hotel type of thing, but you make sure those expenses are accounted for before you buy the property. So they're already baked into the cost of doing business, and you're making sure that you're making money on top. Now, with these short-term properties, that people can get a little hesitant on, obviously it looks great, like, because you're making a lot more money, which is terrific. But if something like, the government shuts everything down all again, where nobody travels and all that sort of stuff, what do you do to mitigate the loss of rents? I know I love that you do this, that you can go into long-term. Hey, let's just put a long-term tenant in there. It'll work out just fine. What do you do also outside of just, putting a long-term tenant? to mitigate these losses if there is something that shuts down the entire like travel industry?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a great point. When you look at going back to the two different strategies, when you look at the traditional vacation rental strategy, almost every market where traditional vacation rentals that, the first places you would think of, like the Smoky Mountains or Destin, Florida, or, all of these have appreciated 25, 30, 50% at least over the last couple of years. And people are still buying in those areas because a cabin that you're buying for 750, 800,000 still makes sense from a cash flow perspective, so you can justify it. So people, that's the first place they think of. And so they're like, well, that's what everyone else is doing, so it makes sense. But like you said, what if something changes, and it can. And if it did, and you're holding an $800,000 cabin in the Smoky Mountains, what's the backup plan then? Does everyone sell them all at once? Because probably not going to get 800,000 if all the cabins are being listed all at once. Do you rent it as a long-term rental? So I would worry a lot about that strategy if that was the one I was adopting, just because, if things aren't as great as they have been, then what? But what I recommend to people in terms, especially just from a regulatory standpoint, I avoid the big cities to start with. I always advise outside the cities, again, going back to the ROI. But on top of that, the big cities are where the most bureaucracy is. Everyone defaults there because they think, well, that's where all the people are. But you can get rented just as much outside of the cities. And I equate it to like starting a race with weights tied around your legs with all the government restrictions. Like, why would you want to start with a whole bunch of obstacles in front of you that they're setting up when just outside, 20 minutes down the road, they're welcoming you with open arms and there's no obstacles? So I look for the places where they've already made a rule that's favorable towards short-term rentals, which most places with a decent amount of population have made some sort of rule, and they span the gamut. There's like 100 different rules. It's not just like we allow them or we don't allow them. It's like every type of variation that a city council could ever come up with is there's a variation of the rules. So look at, the city council rules and see, are they favorable toward vacation rentals, or does it make sense to your investing model? And invest in the places that already have made that rule. Or if they haven't, you can still see, a lot of times they've talked about it and you can kind of see what the sentiment is. So like in the area where I invest, you just have to register at the city. You just have to give them your name. There's no fee. There's no inspection. They make it very simple because they want to bring in as much business as they can to this area. Right down the street, they've outlawed it. They said people are grandfathered in. This is the town right next door. People are grandfathered in that have them, but no new ones are coming in. So it varies so much city to city, but then so you want to pick the place that you think is going to work the best for short-term rentals, and then always have that backup plan in your back pocket that if the worst case scenario happens and I do have to convert them back, they still make sense as the long-term rentals.
Do you have any other creative ways of mitigating governments that actually say no short-term rentals? I mean, it's sad, but this money that is now going to short-term rentals, it used to all go to hotels. And when I say it's sad, it's not more money now going to short-term. Mm-hmm. It was all just going to hotels. They were just making bank. And so hotels are not happy that normal mom and pops like us are siphoning off some of their business, just like taxi cabs are not liking Uber and Lyft because they're taking their business. So they're lobbying against that. Now, if a city does enact something where it says no short-term rentals, I actually think it might be good to read the law. Like if it says you can't rent for less than, 30 days, well then rent 31 or, 32 or something like that. I've also heard a creative way is if you do a rental arbitrage where let's say you own the property and then you create another company that you lease long-term to this other company, but the people stay that are coming in because it's a long-term lease. But the other company is also doing the AirBNB, which it definitely can be skirting around the law. But any other creative ways to get around this? Because they could keep passing laws to say no short-term properties that you can rent. Even HOAs or homeowners associations, they do the same thing. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, those are great. Those are, you can get pretty creative with it. Another strategy that I recommend to people is that when they pass very restrictive laws in a certain area that's desirable, that actually is a huge blessing if you want to invest in that area, because all you have to do is just invest in the town just outside of the city limits that has
I love it. Yeah.
favorable laws, because they did not change the demand in any way whatsoever. All they did is just restrict supply. So now if you're right across the border, say this whole town or this whole county is restricted, and you're right across the border, the way people search on Airbnb is they say, I want to stay in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and they pull up a map. Well, it's a wide out map. So if you're just outside of the city limits of Gatlinburg, and that's where it's restricted, not that it is there, but as an example, you're going to get all those spillover bookings, all the demand just outside. So most of the time you don't see a whole lot of flip-flopping on the laws. It's like, unless there's some major change that happens, if they're just overrun by short-term rentals or something like that. But typically the city council takes a stance, says this is what the rule is the first time, and then that's what it is. So if you can find a place that's favorable, you tend to be in a pretty good position investing there. But again, the hotels are going to have the biggest stronghold in the larger cities. And the other thing to keep in mind too is that enforcement and law are two totally different things. And I've seen laws where it's like, you can only rent to somebody if you're in the house with them. And it's like, is the mayor going to come like look in the window and just make sure that you're sitting in the house with your guests? Like, so how do you monitor that? How do you even enforce that? Like you're not restricting it from being on Airbnb in that town. So you can take the bookings and then somebody's going to actually show up to the house to like peek in to make sure you're sitting. So it's just kind of, some of them are ridiculous and so you have to kind of weigh that out too. And just, do what you think is right and makes the most sense.
And I think you're right too. Always having the end backup being you can do a long-term rental. Like that's always like, if everything goes bad, completely bad, you could definitely do a long-term rental. So the people that get in just like the Hawaii or the Smoky Mountains are like, they have to rent it as a short-term in order to not be losing money. That's very dangerous in my opinion. Man, Kirby, so this is great. So I want people to know how to find you. Obviously, you're going to be at RubeCon. So if you want to meet and hang out with Kirby, you're going to be a part of that. We're also having a function in RubeCon called the Military Wealth Builders track. So it's going to be a track on military and helping if you're a veteran or if you're active. If you come, we're going to have a lot for military as well. And obviously, Kirby, thank you so much for serving our great country. And you're going to be there helping in the Military Wealth Builders as well. But how can people find you and connect with you online?
Yeah, and I just want to say too, I started real estate investing pretty much full-time in 2011 when I transitioned out of the military. And I kind of came up learning through self-education. So I've gone to a ton of conferences over the years, especially in the beginning. And now I kind of make it a point not to go to conferences because I found that there were a lot of, for some reason, this industry attracts a lot of people that just don't share the same values that you or I have. And so I just want to say that I was just blown away last year with RubeCon, how high value the conference was, how well it was put together, especially for the first one when you're working out, how it's even going to go. You have no model to go off of. And it was just amazing. The caliber of people that were there, the things that I learned, even after, doing this for over a decade, was incredible. So I am honored to come back and speak again and just be a part of it again. So so I'll definitely be there. And then if people want to check out my other stuff, my platform's called Living Off Rentals. The best place to go is just livingoffrentals.com/start. And that's the initial information about, how to get started with short-term rentals.
Love it, man. And you have your own podcast. So everybody check out his podcast as well. And man, Kirby, I'm so glad that you're part of the RubeCon and being a part of this whole community of investors. So thank you so much for being on the show and just really just sharing all this wealth, because it's so much better when we help each other, when we gather together to make investing better. So Kirby, great to see you again, man. I'll see you soon.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
And that is it for today. Go ahead and get my free real estate investing course. Text the word rental to 33777. RENTAL to 33777. You can also join my Real Estate Wealth Builders group coaching. Get all my courses. All right, guys, we'll see you in the next show. See ya.